22. Truth transcends the telling. Eno. Nothing more now than the mere dark. The tape is blank. Finally, when Karen does turn around to discover the real emptiness waiting behind her, she does not scream. Instead, her chest heaves, powerless for a moment to take anything in or expel anything out. Oddly enough, as she starts to retreat from the children's bedroom, it almost looks as if something catches her attention. A few minutes later, she returns with a halogen flashlight and steps toward the edge. Hanan Jabara suggests Karen heard something, though there is nothing even remotely like a sound on the high 8. Note 419, Hanan Jabara's Hearing Things, Acoustic Lens, Volume 32, Number 8, 1994, pages 78 to 84, Endnote 419. Carlos Ellsberg agrees with Jabara. Karen stops because of something she hears. Only he qualifies the statement by adding, the sound is obviously imagined, another example of how the mind, any mind, consistently seeks to impose itself upon the abyss. Note 420. Carlos Ellsberg's The Solipsistic Seance, Ouija, Volume 9, Number 4, December 1996, page 45, Endnote 420. As everyone knows, Karen stands there on the brink for several minutes, pointing her flashlight into the darkness and calling out for Davidson. Note 421. Though it may be obvious, recent studies carried out by Merliker and Finch finally confirmed the high probability that the star Davidson caught on film was none other than Karen's halogen. See Bob Merliker and Bob Finch's Starlight, Star Bright, First Flashlight I See Tonight. Bite, Volume 20. August 1995, page 34, Endnote 421. When she finally does step inside, she takes no deep breath and makes no announcement. She just steps forward and disappears behind the black curtain. A second later, that cold hollow disappears too, replaced by the wall. Exactly as it was before, except for one thing. All the children's drawings are gone. Karen's action inspired Paul Auster to conjure up a short internal monologue tracing the directions of her thought. Note 422, Paul Auster's Ribbons, Glas Ohms, Volume 13, Number 83, August 11, 1993, page 2, Endnote 422. Donna Tartt also wrote an inventive portrayal of Karen's dilemma. Except in Tartt's version, instead of stepping into darkness, Karen returns to New York and marries a wealthy magazine publisher. Note 423. Donna Tartt's Please, Please, Please Me. Spin, December 1996, page 137, Endnote 423. Purportedly, there even exists an opera based on the Davidson record, written from Karen's perspective, with this last step into the void serving as the subject for the final aria. Whatever ultimately allows Karen to overcome her fears, there is little doubt her love for Davidson is the primary catalyst. Her desire to embrace him, as she has never done before, defeats the memories of that dark well, the molestations carried out by a stepfather, or whatever shadows her childhood truly conceals. In this moment, she displays the restorative power of what Erich Fromm terms the development of symbiotic relationships through personal courage. Critic Guillaume Keller argues that the role of vision is integral to Karen's success. I believe Karen could never have crossed that line had she not first made those two remarkable cinematic moments, What Some Have Thought and A Brief History of Who I Love. By relearning to see Davidson, she saw what he wasn't, and consequently began to see herself much more clearly. Note 424, Guillaume Keller's The Importance of Seeing Clearly, in Cineast, Volume 22, Number 1, pages 36 to 37, Endnote 424. Esteemed Italian translator Sophia Blinn takes Keller's comments a little further. The most important light Karen carried into that place was the memory of Davidson, and Davidson was no different, though it's commonly assumed his last word was care, or the start of careful. I would argue differently. I believe this utterance is really just the first syllable of the very name on which his mind and heart had finally come to rest. His only hope, his only meaning, Karen. Note 425. Sophia Blynn's Carry On Light in Washingtonian, Volume 31, December 1995, page 72, endnote 425. Regardless of what finally enabled her to walk across that threshold, 49 minutes later, a neighbor saw Karen crying on the front lawn, a pink ribbon in her hair, Naberton cradled in her lap. An ambulance soon arrived. Reston caught up with them at the hospital. Naberton's core temperature had dropped to a frighteningly low 83.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Lacking a cardiopulmonary bypass machine which could have pumped out Naberton's cold blood and replaced it with warm, oxygenated blood, doctors instead had to cut into Naberton's abdominal cavity, insert catheters, and proceed to irrigate his internal organs with warm fluid. Though his core temperature rose to 85.3 degrees, the EKG continued to produce the peculiar J wave indicative of hypothermia. Still more liters of saline were added to the IV. Doctors kept close watch. 1 hour passed. Most there believed he would not live through another. He did. Karen stayed at his side that night, and through the nights and days which followed, reading to him, singing to him, and, when she was tired, sleeping on the floor by his bed. As hours slipped into weeks, Naberton began to recover, but the price he paid for living was not cheap. Frostbite claimed his right hand and clipped the top portion of one ear. Patches of skin on his face were also removed, as well as his left eye. Furthermore, his hip had inexplicably shattered and had to be replaced. Doctors said he would need a crutch for the rest of his life. He did. Still, he survived. Furthermore, the film and tapes he made during his journey also survived. As to what happened after Karen disappeared from view, the only existing account comes from a short interview conducted by a college journalist from William and Mary. Karen. As soon as I walked in there, I started shivering. It was so cold and dark. I turned around to see where I was, but where I'd come from was gone. I started hyperventilating. I couldn't breathe. I was going to die. But somehow I managed to keep moving. I kept putting one foot in front of the other until I found him. Q. You knew he was there? Karen. No, but that's what I was thinking. And then he was there, right at my feet. No clothes on and all curled up. His hand was white as ice. She holds back the tears. When I saw him like that, it didn't matter anymore where I was. I'd never felt that, free before. Long pause. Q. What happened then? Karen. I held him. He was alive. He made a sound when I cradled his head in my arms. I couldn't understand what he was saying at first, but then I realized the flashlight was hurting his eyes, so I turned it off and held him in the darkness. Another long pause. Q. How did you get him out of the house? Karen. It just dissolved. Q. Dissolved? What do you mean? Karen. Like a bad dream. We were in pitch blackness, and then I saw... No, actually, my eyes were closed. I felt this warm, sweet air on my face, and then I opened my eyes and I could see trees and grass. I thought to myself, we've died. We've died, and this is where you go after you die, but it turned out to be just our front yard. Q. You're saying the house dissolved? Karen. No response. Q. How's that possible? It's still there, isn't it? End of interview. Note 426. Missing. Editors. End note 426. '23. Surviving House, Kalapana, Hawaii, 1993. Diane Cook. In Passion for Pity and Other Recipes for Disaster, London, Greenhill Books, 1996, Helmut Muir cried, "They both live. They even get married. It's a happy ending." Which is true. Both Karen and Will Naberton survive their ordeal, and they do exchange conjugal vows in Vermont. Of course, is it really possible to look at Navidson's ravaged face, the patch covering his left eye, the absence of a hand, the crutch wedged under his armpit, and call it a happy ending? Even putting aside the physical cost, what about the unseen emotional trauma which Muir so casually dismisses? The Navidsons may have left the house. They may have even left Virginia, but they will never be able to leave the memory of that place. It is late October, Navidson tells us in the closing sequence to the Navidson record. Almost a year and a half has passed since he emerged from the house. He is still recovering, but making progress, pouring his life into finishing this project. At least one good thing to come out of all this, he says with a smile. The skin condition plaguing my feet for all these years has completely vanished. The children seem to approve of Vermont. Daisy adamantly believes fairies inhabit the countryside and spirits possess her collection of stuffed animals and dolls, in particular a red and gold one. Chad, on the other hand, has become obsessed with Lego, spending countless hours with pounds and pounds of their arrangement. When questioned about this newfound interest, he only says that someday he wants to become an architect. Karen struggles every day to keep up with everyone's energies. Only recently she was diagnosed with malignant breast cancer. The mastectomy was considered successful, and subsequent chemotherapy declared very effective. Nevertheless, hair loss and severe stomach ulceration have left Karen gaunt and grey. She has lost too much weight and constantly needs to sit down and catch her breath. Still, as Navidson tenderly shows us, her will-o'-the-wisp smiles seem impervious to the ravaging effects of disease, and whenever she laughs, the notes sing a call to victory. Navidson captures all this in simple, warmly lit shots. Simmering milk, roasted walnuts, and against a backdrop of black ash and pine, Karen's graceful fingers braiding her daughter's long auburn hair. Despite Karen's infrequently removed woolen hat, she and Daisy still both share a remarkable radiance, what Massa Lawton once described as a kind of beautiful mischief. Note 427, Massa Lawton's Comb and Brush in Z, Volume 13, Number 4, 1994, page 501, end note 427. Nor is this the only shot of mother and child. Hundreds of photographs hang on the walls of their home. Every room, stairway, and corridor supports pictures of Karen, Daisy, Chad, and Navidson, as well as Tom, Reston, Karen's mother, their friends, distant relatives, ancient relatives, even Mallory and Hillary. Though this collage is immensely appealing, Navidson is wise enough to know he cannot close on such images. They may be heartwarming, but what they imply rings false. As Navidson says himself, I kept looking for assurances, for that gentle ending, but I never found it. Maybe because I know that place is still there, and it will always be there. Navidson has never stopped wrestling with the meaning of his experience, and even though it has literally crippled him, he somehow manages to remain passionate about his work. Mercifully, in her captivating book on art, culture, and politics, in which she includes the Navidson record in the spire of her analysis, Daphne Kaplan reminds the reader what it means to be passionate. Passion has little to do with euphoria and everything to do with patience. It is not about feeling good, it is about endurance. Like patience, passion comes from the same Latin root, pati. It does not mean to flow with exuberance, it means to suffer. Note upward arrow. Daphne Kaplan's The Courage to Withstand. Hopewell, New Jersey, Echo Press, 1996, page 3. End note. Upward arrow. Navidson suffers the responsibilities of his art, and consequently must turn from the blind comfort found in those neatly framed photographs filling his home to follow his costume-clad children out into the New England streets, their hearts set on sacks of candy, their paths hidden beneath cold-colored leaves. In those final shots, Navidson gives a wink to the genre his work will always resist, but invariably join: Halloween, jack-o'-lanterns, vampires, witches, and politicians, a whole slew of 8-year-old ghouls haunting the streets of Dorset, plundering its homes for apples and Milky Ways, all while tossing up high-pitched screams into the sparkling blackness, forever closing in above them. Tongues of grey ice cover the roads, candles flicker unevenly. and grown-ups gulp hot cider from styrofoam cups, always keeping watch over their sheep in wolves' clothing, lest something disturb their pantomime. Each squeal and cry arrests a sip of warmth, as parents everywhere immediately seek out these tiny forms wending their way from porch to porch across great lakes of shadow. Navidson does not close with the caramel-covered face of a Casper the Friendly Ghost. He ends on what he knows is true, and always will be true. Letting the parade pass from sight, he focuses on the empty road beyond, a pale curve vanishing into the woods where nothing moves, and a street lamp flickers on and off, until at last it flickers out, and darkness sweeps in like a hand. December 25, 1996.